It hasn't started yet, but the Middle East, for so long on the brink of a regional conflict, is tonight on the brink of a significant ceasefire. The war between Israel and Hezbollah in southern Lebanon is due to end in 4 hours' time. The fighting began almost 14 months ago, the day after the October the 7th massacre. The Israeli cabinet approved the peace plan this evening after the most intense bombardment yet of the Lebanese capital, Beirut. Then President Biden, who was claiming American credit for the agreement, announced that the fighting will pause for 60 days. Of course, it does not mean Israel's more destructive and deadly war on Hamas in the Gaza Strip is over, not anytime soon anyway. On a night of expectation and potential progress, we'll have the latest from John in Israel and Robert in Washington in a moment. First, John reports on the destructive path to a deal.
Today has seen some of the heaviest Israeli airstrikes of the Lebanon war, with the extensive bombing of Beirut. As is so often the case when the end is in sight, the combatants have been using the countdown to peace to demonstrate their ability to wage war. As the Israelis hurried through their target list, Hezbollah too were going at it, firing dozens of rockets and drones into northern Israel in recent days. The Shia militia keen to show it is undefeated. But these were among the last salvos, because tonight, at long last, Joe Biden had a diplomatic success to announce to the world.
Today I have some good news to report from the Middle East. I just spoke with the Prime Minister of Israel and Lebanon. I'm pleased to announce that their governments have accepted the United States proposal to end the devastating conflict between Israel and Hezbollah.
Earlier, the Israeli Prime Minister had himself gone on television to justify the ceasefire and to outline what might happen if Hezbollah violate it.
The duration of ceasefire is depending on what will happen in Lebanon. In full understanding with the US, we are preserving a full military freedom of operation. If Hezbollah violates the agreement and would try to rearm, we would attack.
While the fighting has lasted 14 months, this war intensified in September when the Israelis inflicted a body blow on Hezbollah by detonating pagers they'd turned into booby traps. When Hezbollah resorted to using walkie-talkies, it turned out the Israelis had also rigged those to explode. Forced to meet in person, Hezbollah commanders were soon under attack from the Israeli Air Force, and eventually they tracked down the organization's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, who they killed in this massive strike. The Israelis followed up their air campaign and intelligence successes by sending troops over the border on October the 1st. The Third Lebanon War has cost the lives of almost 100 Israelis and more than 3,500 Lebanese. But that pales in comparison with Gaza, where the death toll stands at more than 44,000 and counting. Today, increasingly short of living space, these Gazans were trying to protect their tents and shacks from high water and winter weather, another layer of misery being inflicted on the 2.2 million Palestinians still stuck in the trenches. John Irvine, News at 10, Tel Aviv.
Well, let's go first to Robert, who's in Washington for us this evening. And Robert, the US and France were instrumental in securing this ceasefire, and I guess for President Biden, with just a few weeks left in office, you presume this is partly about leaving a legacy and he will want this ceasefire to hold.
Yes, I mean, the president spoke with surprising optimism from the South Lawn a short time ago. He said he would continue to pursue a two-state solution. He would aim for Saudi-Israeli normalization. He still hopes for a Gaza ceasefire and a hostage deal. But remember, look, 4 years ago, this was a president who projected himself as a foreign policy specialist with deep contacts across the Middle East. And where does he end his term? Well, with South Lebanon in ruins, with a humanitarian catastrophe unfolding across Gaza still after a year, with no sign of that elusive Saudi-Israeli peace deal, and above all else with a two-state solution looking further away than it's ever been before. His supporters would say, of course, look, he's been dealt a terrible hand. October the 7th, an intransigent Netanyahu, an emboldened Iran. But you'd still have to conclude this has been a disastrous legacy, a failure of American diplomacy, yes, and in particular, a failure of American leverage over its key ally, Israel.
OK, Robert, thank you. And turning back to things on the ground in the Middle East, let's go to John now in Tel Aviv. And John, the inevitable question, of course, is what happens next. But we should also just reflect for a moment on this hugely important junction for the Middle East.
Yes, Paul, this is a significant achievement for which the world should be grateful. Suddenly, a lot of heat is being taken out of this troubled region. And a war that could easily have been a catalyst for a far greater conflagration will be coming to an end in just a few hours' time. The plan is for the ceasefire to come into effect at 2 o'clock London time tomorrow morning. Then there will be a 60-day implementation period during which Hezbollah will retreat northwards and the Israeli army withdraw southwards, eventually leaving Lebanon altogether. Now, while Hezbollah remain undefeated, the Israelis have come out on top. And the fact that they've forced the creation of a 20-mile Hezbollah-free buffer zone means they've achieved their primary war aim, which was to enable the return of 60,000 displaced residents to their border homes. Incidentally, more than 1 million displaced Lebanese will also be able to go back to their homes. I think this ceasefire is a blow, Paul, for Hamas in Gaza, who look more isolated tonight than ever. But the ceasefire also asks questions of the Israelis. If they can agree a ceasefire with a much more powerful group like Hezbollah without totally defeating that group, why can't they do the same with Hamas? Not least because such a move would facilitate the release of the remaining hostages in Gaza. What exactly is the point of continuing the war in Gaza? That's the question Israel will be asked increasingly.